Hi everyone, I'm back after a bit of a hiatus. Sorry I wasn't able to post another video sooner, but here I am. And I'm going to try and continue along with the theme that I was talking about last time. And that is trying to provide a historical perspective to help provide a better idea to people about many of the fallacies that we've been exposed to in recent times about the wonders of neoliberalism and the evils of socialism. Back in the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher's dictum was there is no alternative. And it was in response to the fall of the Soviet Union and her belief that that was a vindication of the wonders of capitalism. So there is no alternative to capitalism, and if that's the case, God help us all. But it's complete baloney. There is an alternative. There has always been an alternative. And that includes even the United States. Yes, the United States at one time was a country that had a strong presence of people who subscribed to socialism and belonged to socialist parties. So the first 17, this is from Howard Zinn's A People History of the United States. Back in the first 17 years of the 20th century, millions of people subscribed to socialism. Over 1 million people read Appeal to Reason and other socialist publications. 100,000 people were members of the Socialist Party. 1,200 people who were socialists in political affiliation held office in over 340 municipalities. Even in places that you would consider highly unlikely, among tenant farmers, railroad, coal workers, lumberjacks, people believed and worked hard to advance the Socialist Party as an alternative. In Oklahoma, for example, a place that we don't usually consider a very liberal place, there were 12,000 people who were socialists in 1914. This is documented, by the way, in a book called Red Dirt, which I would recommend to you if you're interested in reading about socialism back then. Let me read something that Howard Zinn writes. He says, to see the disintegration of the Soviet Union as a sign of the failure of socialism is to mistake a monstrous tyranny created by Stalin for the vision of an egalitarian and democratic society that has inspired enormous numbers of people all over the world. Indeed, the removal of the Soviet Union as a false surrogate for the idea of socialism creates a great opportunity. We can now reintroduce genuine socialism to a world feeling the sickness of capitalism, its nationalistic hatreds, its perpetual warfare, riches for a small number of people in a small number of countries, and hunger, homelessness, insecurity for everyone else. Powerful words. So yes, please abolish from your mind forever the idea that the Soviet Union represents socialism. It never did, and it is a false equivalence intended once again to promote the idea of the wonders of neoliberalism. So, what happened? World War I happened, and one of the worst presidents shows you that Democrats could be horrible presidents just as much as Republicans. Woodrow Wilson, who brought us into the First World War under multiple false pretenses, also used the First World War to destroy the Socialist Party in the United States, to use the Espionage Act, which is still being used by people like Barack Obama, by the way, to imprison people without habeas corpus or trial, because they are seen as threats to the United States, when it is really being used to stifle resistance and opposition. So is there an alternative even now? Yeah, there is. So I'm going to post a video from the Young Turks for you about Sweden. In 2014, Sweden elected a highly socialist government that increased taxes so that now 43% of the gross domestic product of Sweden is based on the tax rate. The comparable rate in the United States is 26%. So you might say, what a disaster Sweden must be. No, actually, Sweden's economy is growing at twice the rate of the United States economy. It has a high rate of employment. People have free health care. People have the ability to get higher education for no cost. People have a higher quality of living. Recently, they have implemented a 4-day week as opposed to a 5-day week. And they're paying people the same amount of money despite working less. What a crazy idea that must be. But no, it's an alternative, and it's an alternative that creates equity. It's an alternative that promotes justice. It's an alternative that is moral, compassionate, ethical. Everything that our country fails on multiple scores, because our country has been completely destroyed and ravaged by greed based in neoliberalism. So let's wake up. Let's stop pretending like socialism is a word that ascends from the bowels of hell, and that those who espouse socialists are either wicked, evil, Kabbalistic anarchists or pie-in-the-sky idealists. They are neither. People who espouse socialism are people who believe that human beings should be treated with compassion, care, and dignity. What further evidence I can give about how wonderful neoliberalism has worked out is I would just suggest, even though it's an extremely depressing book on some level, that you read The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. Because every time that we export neoliberalism, things grow worse. She talks about the idea of disaster capitalism. Now, of course, capitalism is a disaster in and of itself in many ways, but disaster capitalism is something that shows the utter depravity of neoliberalists. It is when people seize on terrible catastrophes, whether they are natural or economic or political, they seize on these as opportunities to export neoliberal ideas that result in even worse conditions. So following Hurricane Katrina, neoliberalists who were inspired by that wonderful neoliberal guru Milton Friedman descended upon New Orleans and destroyed the public school system. After the earthquake in Haiti, neoliberalists descended on Haiti in order to profit on the misery of millions of people who were affected by the earthquake in Haiti. The Soviet Union, when it fell, Russia, which is now, of course, a terrible, terrible country that's trying to undermine our democracy. First of all, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Bill Clinton actively intervened in the Russian elections in order to make sure that Boris Yeltsin was elected president. So I guess if people interfere in other people's elections, that's an act of war. So you could say that we committed an act of war against Russia. But moreover, Russia is not a communist country. People who believe that are completely out of touch with reality. It's an oligarchy just like us. Why? Because we made it that way. Because we sold them the ideas of neoliberalism and created even more inequality in Russia than existed under the Soviet Union. Quite a feat, isn't it? Yay, neoliberalism. Yay, yay. And we did the same thing in other places. South Africa. Yes, South Africa, we did that too. So let's look at what the alternatives are. Sweden, I think, offers a true alternative for us. And if you have any doubts, just look at the devastation that remains wherever neoliberalism leaves its mark. Thanks, and hopefully I'll be making videos sooner. Carry on the fight. Resistance.